Hello, it's Rock coming to you from the Whisky Library. Today we'll be reviewing, well, a 12-year-old. Some might say that it is a Bourbon Unicorn. A lot of people call it Baby Pappy. So it's, Pappy Van Winkle 12-year-old or Pappy 15 less 3 years. It can be hard to get bourbon, but still a fantastic bourbon nevertheless. And remember, today's video will be coming to you from the perspective of Australia. So just bear that in mind. So stay tuned, ready for a Weller review, Weller bourbon review. Stay tuned. Welcome back, it's Rock from the Whisky Library. I'm doing today's review for MyBottleShop.com. And today we're going to be looking at, I suppose you might say it's one of the harder to get bourbons. This video is coming to you from an Australian perspective, so I understand it might differ in different parts of the world. Here in Australia we get a limited allocation like elsewhere in the world, and this bourbon polarizes people because bang for buck, price point, taste, all those issues, a lot of conflicting issues at stake here. The Weller is produced by the Buffalo Trace Distillery. Now, of course, they do Buffalo Trace Bourbon, Eagle Rare, Pappy Van Winkle, 79. They do heaps of different bourbons. Now, actually, I went to the Buffalo Trace Distillery maybe 7 years ago. This video is coming to you from early 2022. So we're in the midst of sort of COVID or whatever, but I've been actually to Buffalo Trace Bourbon Distillery, and I think, to be honest with you, in those days you had the Weller 12 and you had the Weller Special Reserve and you had the 107, which we haven't really seen here in Australia, but I know over there in America it's available. Now recently, originally there was a Weller 7, the Weller 107, the Weller 12, and probably always a Special Reserve here, and then Buffalo Trace / Weller did a few different things. They released this CYPB bourbon, and what they did is they went out to the customers. They said, hey, you make your own bourbon, and they took thousands upon thousands of votes on what would make up a perfect bourbon. And actually they came up with the CYPB, and then customers said, oh, we really want to buy this bottle. The problem was they didn't produce enough bottles, so the CYPB became like a collector's item, an instant collector's classic, and perhaps not as many people got to enjoy it as possible. And of course the other issue or problem was that it became expensive. So, if you found a bottle, it was astronomical amounts of money. Then they released the foolproof Weller. So Weller Foolproof here, and that came out with the blue label. That came out at a whopping 57%. But again, they couldn't make enough of it. It was foolproof, sort of almost straight out of the barrel. They probably had heaps of things to do with the bourbon, not least of which was making Pappy Van Winkle and several of the other weeded products. So it was, again, hard to get, very limited allocation. Not many people got to enjoy it. I think the important thing to remember about Weller and the 12-year-old, and in fact all these Wellers you see in front of you, is that they're a wheated bourbon. So traditionally bourbons contain corn, malted barley obviously, and a rye component. So you had the corn, which gave the sweetness, rye which gave a little bit of a bite, and of course the malted barley to make it a whiskey. Now what Weller did, or Buffalo Trace, just remember this Buffalo Trace Distillery, what they did with the Weller range is they effectively removed the rye. So if you said that the mash bill, and to be honest with you, the mash bill on these bourbons is secret, nobody really knows what it is. Some bourbon distilleries or producers release their mash bill, like Four Roses for example. So if you buy the mash bill, or you buy the bourbon, you know what the mash bill is, so you're getting, because they don't hide that fact. But in the case of Weller, and that's probably one in the Buffalo Trace line where they do sort of keep it a bit secret. I mean, everybody sort of roughly knows that, if you looked at say Buffalo Trace, it'll be 70% corn, 16% rye, and the remainder 40% malted barley. Now, what they've effectively done with the Weller range is take that 16% rye out and replace it with wheat. So the wheat gives it, I would say, a softer mouthfeel, softer taste, smoother, doesn't have that rye bite. Now, some people think, that these bourbons, particularly the wheated ones and particularly Buffalo Trace, is a little bit too sweet. So for a traditional bourbon lover, they like their corn, their rye, and their malted barley combination. In this particular case with the Weller, they're considered to be soft bourbons. They have a very delicious mouthfeel. Now, in the case of the Weller 12, this is obviously an aged bourbon, so thankfully it has 12-year age statement on the bottle. And unfortunately, like so many bourbons now, you just don't know what the age statement is. But if you took the Special Reserve, which is a more affordable entry level, that would be roughly a 7-year-old bourbon. ISSC YPB in the full proof non-age statement, so who really knows, but we're guessing 7 years-ish for both of these bourbons. Different mash bills, different proof on entry. In the case of the Weller 12, well, it does have the age statement, and unfortunately it can be quite hard to score, but if you can get a bottle, I would say this, go and grab a bottle. But let's crack open the bottle, although you can see it's already cracked open. We've done a little bit of pre-tasting here in the Whisky Library. I'm just going to pour out a dram into the glass. Let's take a look at the colour. Now, I'll say this, the 12-year-old is a different beast to the Special Reserve. And there's a big difference in price. Australian dollars, you're talking maybe sort of $300 for the Weller 12, and you're talking $80 for Special Reserve. So big difference in price. And as Jim Murray said, he rates one sort of 93 and 187. So there's a big jump up in quality too. And to be honest with you, I totally agree with that. I think Weller 12 is a big jump up from the Special Reserve over here. Now let's just take a look at the colour of that. The first thing you'll notice about that is it has a deep copper, dark gold, dark copper tinge to it. And that really stands out amongst the bourbons that you might try that are lighter in colour, even the Special Reserve. Aside from the full proof, I don't know if it shows up here on the camera, but it has a really deep brown, dark gold, dark copper tint. But even this one here, you can see how dark the colour is on that bottle, right? So that tells you there's something special about that bourbon, something different from the other ones in the range. And if I swirl it around in my glass here, you can see it coats the glass. It's very oily, very viscous, long legs. Tasting notes. As far as I suppose on the nose, I do get that ethanol-y alcohol smell, I guess, that you get from so many higher proof bourbons. And again, this is Australian perspective, so this is 45% in the bottle, which probably if you're watching this video from America, that's that's the least you'll take as far as your bourbon goes. But in Australia, we consider that sort of high, mid to high proof. But I've tasted a lot of bourbons, and here in the Whisky Library we've got a lot of bourbons, and the good bourbons, the real bourbons, they're 45%. They're not the watered down 40%. Unfortunately, we get in Australia because we're dealing with onerous tax laws here, and you tax on the amount of alcohol in the bottle. So the more water that goes in that bottle, and the smaller it is, or 750 in American case. I think this actually is a 750ml bottle. So at least here in Australia, 750ml bottle. So at least in Australia, we're not watering the bourbon down, and we're not changing the size of the bottle from 750 down to 700. So that's a good thing. Now I'm just going to approach the bottle, the glass here, and just give this a bit of a taste. Now I'm tasting this without water or ice. Personally, especially with bourbons and slightly higher proof, 45, 50, 55, 60 whiskies, 60% whiskies, I like to put just a single cube of filtered water, not tap water, by the way, particularly where we are in Sydney. Here the tap water can be terrible, and so you want to have filtered water. If you're going to make your ice cubes, you do filtered water ice cubes. Just throw a cube of ice in there. Just wait for it not to melt, obviously, but just to I'd say cool the whiskey down a bit. You can help enjoy the flavors a little bit more. The thing that strikes me about this bourbon, and I'd say the impression that I'd take the most away from this bourbon is it has really chocolate notes. You can almost see with the color, it's like a dark color, almost a dark chocolatey color, and that chocolate flavor really shines through in the taste. I almost get some, I'd hate to say bitterness, right? Nobody wants to say that their whiskey is bitter. But if you had grapefruit, or you even had tangy orange peel notes, there's a hint of bitterness there, a hint of astringency, and I don't mind that, because I think it highlights the flavour. And when I have a bourbon, and this has got a very strong follow through on the palate, it's very warming. You can really feel that 45%. I get, that almond astringency. You can taste that almond astringency on that. Now, I like almonds, and I'm sure a lot of people do. But, when you have an almond, you get that a little bit of bitterness on the astringency. But I'd say like dark chocolate, I get dark chocolate notes. A little bit of caramel, of course, because like all bourbons, because of the corn and the oak shining through. Marzipan, cherry again. Cherry has that sweet, bitter taste, which can be a quiet taste. Not everybody likes cherries. A little bit of fruitiness there on the palate. A long, strong finish. Could do with an ice cube on it. And I'll say this: a lot of people say you're either a bourbon or a whiskey guy, right? I see that a lot on YouTube and in forums or whatever. It's like, hey, I drink Islay whiskies, or I drink Highland whiskey, or I drink Scotch whiskey, or I drink single malts. And there's a certain train of thought that says, hey, bourbon people and single malt people, never the twain shall meet. And I'll be honest with you, to a big extent, that is actually true. Because if you're a bourbon drinker, you're out there looking for bourbons, and the thought of maybe drinking single malt doesn't appeal to you. Whether you have that in your collection or not doesn't appeal to you. And by the same token, single malt people, particularly people from the UK and even some parts of Australia, like I drink single malt Australian whiskies or single malt Scottish whiskies, and I don't cross over to bourbon for whatever reason. Whether it's a bias, bourbon is for a certain section of society. Certainly I can say here in the Whisky Library, for myself personally, if it's whiskey and it's good, I will drink it. And I don't think there should be that delineation between bourbon and Scotch whiskey. But I know that's an argument for another day, and I know a lot of people may disagree with that. But I think we've got to take the whiskies based on their merits. And in this particular case, I think the Weller 12 doesn't live up to its unicorn status. This is a massive point of debate, and I'm on the fence with that, to be honest with you. I'm a bourbon drinker, I'm a single malt drinker. Certainly in Australia, probably like in parts of America, it's not cheap, but certainly in Australia, I mean, I know you could buy this bottle of bourbon in parts of America for $40. But here in Australia, with the taxes and obviously, you know, traveling overseas and the massive, I suppose, transport. You know, we're talking what from Kentucky to here, 18,000 kilometers. It's got to go across border. It's got to go to Bond, Australia. Here we have high taxes and whatever. So, you know, this bourbon probably should be more affordable. But then again, you know, I've tasted Pappy Van Winkle, 15, 20, 23-year-old, and this Weller 12 really stands up. And of course, that makes sense, right? It's from the same stable as Pappy Van Winkle. It's from the same stable as Buffalo Trace, which is fantastic bourbons. The truth is, the wheated bourbons are not for everyone. They're only for some people. And I suppose you would say that, you know, it has a sweeter profile. And if you're a bourbon drinker and you're looking for that normal corn, rye, malted barley profile, you know, sweetness with counteracted with a little bit of bite, this might not be for you. And you might go, well, this is overrated. But the truth is, honestly, I think this is a great product. I think to sit down and have a Weller 12 with some cheese. I've just got some cheese over here on the side, and just to have that quality of bourbon. I mean, it's superb quality, no doubt about it. And if you can get your hands on a bottle, I would say do it. Grab a bottle, savor it, open slowly. Bear in mind, it is a big step up from the Special Reserve. They're almost entirely different products. You can even see in the color. And maybe one time, if we haven't done one already, we'll do a review on the Special Reserve. And I think if you can get a bottle, get it. Of course, if you're going to ever find a bottle of Foolproof or CYPB, grab it, because these are future classics and they won't last. So I would say I would give this Weller 12, as far as bourbon goes, I'm going to give this a 91 out of 100. I rate this bourbon, and I think you should rate it too. And if you're a bourbon drinker or even a whiskey fan, whiskey aficionado, you should have this bottle in your collection. So go out and get it and enjoy. I'm Rock, coming to you from the Whisky Library. Until the next review, thank you.